All right. Hey guys. So today I have here with me Fiona Moriarty, and she just got her pro card in, let's see, November of last year. And so we're going to dive deep into kind of her history, how she's handling this whole COVID situation, what the goals are on the calendar, all that fun stuff. So I will let you start, Fiona, by just giving us a little bit of maybe history about you, your sporting history, and we can kind of dive too into the nutrition stuff in a bit here.
Sure. My name is Fiona Moriarty, as Kyla just said. I came to triathlon via running probably about 5 years ago. And I ran track, played soccer, and did Irish step dancing all through high school and college. And then started running pretty seriously. I went from being a 400, 800 person in college, which is really short, to 5Ks and 10Ks on the track right after school. And I was fast, but I didn't really handle the mileage and the distance very well, which we'll probably talk about a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then trying to balance that on top of a career was also something that led to a whole lot of burnout. And then I started riding my bike because I was living in California at the time and fell in love with riding specifically. So
Awesome.
eventually ended up in triathlon through all of those things. So
Cool. That's great. And so for those of the people who are watching or listening, is that Fiona and I started kind of working together. Look, we were looking back at the charts, and it looks like it was like April of 2018. So it's been a couple of years that we've been in contact. And when we first started working together, what do you think was kind of the big, or maybe what triggered you maybe to reach out and get some nutrition help?
sure. So like looking back a little bit, and from a running side of things, when you go from soccer and being more of a middle distance athlete, your nutritional needs are certainly different. You're going more for strength, and it's not the culture of restricting eating is not so prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
You can't output power if you don't have the fuel. And then when you shift towards the longer distances, especially with competitive running, like post collegiately, and even seriously after that, there is a culture that surrounds it of eating less will make you go faster.
Mm-hmm.
And it is really hard to not avoid it, but like to not get sucked into it because you see a small performance bump at the beginning of anyone doing some kind of like restricted eating protocol, right? You're
Yeah.
getting lighter, you can go faster, and you aren't necessarily thinking about the long term repercussions of what that can do to your bone health and what that can do to your mental health.
Yeah.
You're just seeing times go down, and if
Mm.
you are a competitive person, like that, that is attractive.
Yeah.
And it's only sustainable for so long.
Yeah.
So that to me was a really big reason why I was never as successful as I could have been when I started running
Mm.
longer, because I wasn't fueling enough to not get 5 stress fractures, to not be depressed, to handle all of the things that really
Yeah.
come like as side baggage to an eating disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I was finally stepped away from running and was really moving towards triathlon, I just felt like even though I cognitively knew that I needed to eat more and I needed to eat differently, it was really hard for me to not force it on myself, but to take that step and
Mm-hmm.
without somebody guiding me. And so like my weight fluctuated a little bit. I like probably overcompensated, and then just felt like I had no control, or I wasn't sure what I was doing
Mm-hmm.
in order to help my performance. And I was getting better and getting fast at
Yeah.
triathlon. So I wanted to like make sure I ticked off all the boxes, and I just felt like I needed to talk to a woman who knew what they were doing and could help me.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad we linked up. And so kind of to touch a little bit back on what you just were talking about there. So you kind of, I heard you say you started to feel good, like you were doing things right, by doing a little bit of maybe restrictive eating because you were seeing those times improve. And I think
Yeah.
during that period, did you also notice any improvements in energy, or was it just the times improving, or did you like feel good initially and then start to see the fractures occur?
No, like mentally it was a super low point for me. Aside from having a super stressful job, it was kind of a chunk of years where I had a really negative coach that was not enforcing the behavior, but certainly not discouraging it. And
Mm.
so when that is tied, or a coach's benefit is tied to your performance improvement, and they don't necessarily know you as a person, or
Mm-hmm.
they don't invest in you as a person, like they can't see that you're struggling on the side.
Yeah.
And at the time, or like I said, it was a couple of years, even though I was still getting fast and like dealing with sporadic injuries, anytime I would go into a workout, I just didn't, I was so anxious. I wasn't excited to do it. I felt like my entire worth was on the line if I didn't have a good
Yeah.
workout. And so
Yeah.
I was just a complete bundle of nerves, like
Mm.
often would step off the track in big meets. And
Yeah.
I just never was confident
Mm.
that no matter what my workouts, the ones I did complete, would say I could do,
Mm-hmm.
that I was ever going to be thin enough or fast enough to compete. And so
Yeah.
like it was just a super hard time
Yeah.
overall. And like
Yeah.
my my deepest sympathies to anyone who has ever been there. It
Right.
was super
Yeah.
rough.
Yeah. I mean, from some of the research too, that like I've been reading over, I think I just was checking some of it out just recently, is that one of the things that kind of like caught my eye and was like, oh my gosh, like this kind of makes sense, is that during the kind of the initial, sometimes caloric restriction period, and this is, I believe the research was maybe specific to red S related kind of subjects, but they talked about how sometimes during that initial stage, because of the elevation in some of the fight or flight hormones, at cortisol and such, is that sometimes the athletes actually end up feeling okay and sometimes even energetic for a short period of time while the hormones kind of spike up to try and mitigate maybe this additional stress that they're under, and then
Mm-hmm.
things kind of start to eventually fall off for the individuals as those hormones basically can't keep up. But it sounds like things for you were maybe a little bit different in that situation, but also dealt with some of the like you said, the injuries and things like that as well. But I thought that was really interesting that, I mean, our bodies are so smart to try and kind of keep up in a sense, but to think that we might be feeling really good when in our body's telling us maybe we feel really good, and then all of a sudden that tapers off and we're like, wait, what happened? Like I've been doing the same thing this whole time, but all of a sudden now my hormones maybe are crashing, and someone's not realizing that too is a situation that can occur. So yeah, super interesting stuff. So with your kind of transition into kind of nutritional changes, I guess I should say, is like, what was kind of the biggest thing that you noticed when we started working together? And I asked Flick this question. I was like, what was the thing that you're like, I said to you and you're like, what? Like, I got to do that. Like, was there that moment at all?
I think for me it was the volume pre-big ride, like just wrapping my brain around what that many carbohydrates looks like,
Yeah.
and even post exercise fueling.
Mm.
I had never, or I guess when you're in the headspace of calories, like I have X amount of calories to have in a day, then everything is so tightly wound up that like you finish a workout and I don't know, maybe you have like half of a bar or something, but like you want to save those extra calories for like this half a bowl of cereal you want to have after dinner as your treat.
Right.
And like thankfully by the time we started working together, like that was a long thing of the past, but like I still remember those moments when I would finish like a monster track workout and still be thinking like, okay, that means I can have like caloric stupid mental math.
Oh yeah.
So really thinking about like, okay, now I'm actually using this to feed myself properly. That was just such a big mental shift.
Yeah.
And things like, it doesn't necessarily mean how much volume, like you can find foods like rice milk that have a whole bunch of carbohydrates in them, to kind of round out your needs. You're not just sitting there eating a pile of bread. It's like
Right.
there are other ways to get to hit those numbers.
Yes. And you're an avid baker too, right?
I am.
Yes, you're crafty. I watch you on the Instagram and the interwebs.
Like one of the pieces of the formerly stressful time was like I was working as a pastry chef and coaching at Harvard. I was a track and field coach and at Wellesley afterward, while also running seriously. So I would wake up for an early morning bread shift with my chef whites in my backpack and like run to the train because it was 4:00 in the morning and like freezing in the middle of Boston. Work in a bakery all day, then run to Harvard, coach at track practice, do my own track practice, and then get home at like 11 o'clock at night and get up at 5:00 in the morning to do it again. And like, you cannot sustain that pace of life without feeding yourself appropriately. So I learned some really great things about baking there. But I also didn't know at the time that I was celiac. And so I was getting super, super sick. Like I will never forget one day the room started spinning, and I kind of, the next time I was conscious enough again, I was sitting underneath the sink, and like, I don't remember getting there. It was just, when I think back on that time, and there was just so much stress, and I was putting myself under so much stress and so much anxiety, and like, I wasn't eating the right things. I wasn't eating enough, and I was making myself sick. So like, it was just a whole mess.
Yeah, man, that's scary too. I mean, falling down and fainting like that, or getting kind of lightheaded is not fun. I've had my experience with that as well, as being a 5'10" female too, with the quick standing from laying down situation. I had funny story. I used to play basketball in high school, and I clearly did not know a thing about hydration during that time. And I would just sweat it all out. My dad used to just tell me to eat pickles to help. And I got up from laying down to hug my mom to say goodbye because she was leaving the house. And as I hugged her, I guess I blacked out, and she thought it was a joke. So she let go, and I just fell back. Like, I was just laying there apparently with my eyes rolling in my head, but it was on carpet, thank goodness. So yeah, that is not fun to wake up. I thought I like fell asleep and took a nap on my rug on my bedroom. It is so weird when that happens, but yeah, that is scary. In a bakery too. I bet it's like a tile floor too. That's not good. So that is scary. So tell me a little bit too. I'm curious, your Instagram handle name, if you want to share that here.
Sure.
And how, like, what is the kind of meaning behind that?
Well, my handle name is Salt and Sweet, and that was because I think at the time when I was really writing about what I was making, and like my full-time job, I'm a technical writer, so like writing is a huge part of what I do. If I ever get my act together, I want to write a book one day. So I think that was my blog title at the time, but it really comes from my like strong belief that all baked goods need like a strong salt component in them.
Yes.
And just in general, all of my food, I put a whole bunch of salt in and or on it. So
awesome.
like salted chocolate chip cookies are my ultimate favorite.
Yes.
So
I love that.
That is really where it came from.
Awesome. Yeah, I thought it was a baking reference for sure.
Yeah.
That is a great I like that for a book name for you one day. You could do a little book or something, or a bio. One of those things would be awesome. So another question that I am kind of checking in with a lot of athletes right now about is obviously the current situation. It is it's May 1st, 2020. I think we're like a couple months now into COVID situation. Yeah, I know. So we're doing this virtually. For those of you who are watching the video, you can see that we're split up on Zoom here. So yeah, we're doing a virtual podcast interview today because we're all sheltering in place. So with that, this whole situation going on, and you getting your pro card just end of last year, and kind of the racing season either being canceled, postponed, what kind of races did you have on the calendar this year, and what has happened to them, and how has that affected you?
Well, I would say like the build up from last year was pretty strong going into this spring. For my first pro race, I was super excited. Never felt fitter and, more ready to race. And on the first, it was like between mile 1 and 2 of the bike, I got a double flat. So I fixed the first one in 2.5 minutes, which like kudos to me is the best time I've ever taken to change a flat. And then it, like the tube, I went and put the wheel on, the tube inside just popped again, and like I didn't have anything to fix it. So I took a very long sad walk from that spot right back to T1, where I cried my eyes out, and like it took me a couple of days to get over it.
Yeah.
But anyways, to like get ready for the next year, I had planned on racing in China in, I think, late February, early March, and then Oceanside in April, and Staffordshire and Luxembourg, like a back-to-back in 2 weeks in June. So all of those races have since been canceled. And I think the mental shift for me after Oceanside, where, you know, I was waiting and just kind of hoping this whole thing panned out. And I didn't kind of appreciate the gravity of it all, and how long it would take to really settle down. Obviously there's a huge financial ramification for, you know, booking all of these flights. My boyfriend is also a triathlete and was racing at either all of these things with me or the majority of them, and always comes with me because he owns a bike fit studio. So like for me, having his support like makes me race better from a mental standpoint, and an actual like, hey, my bike is in better shape and I have someone here to support me. So like both of us had paid for all these trips and stuff, and it's just like it took us a couple of instances of these things getting canceled to just like finally accept it all.
I think that's been a similar kind of, I guess, mental processing that a lot of people have been going through, as well as with checking in with a lot of my clients too. It's the kind of the first month was like, this is really scary, we're confused. And then now kind of we're sitting at a place where like people are a little bit almost unfortunately used to this type of normal, and almost like they're managing it or accepting it, like you're saying, and kind of just so wait and see kind of thing situation right now. So what does that look like for you in terms of your training now? How has that affected or changed your training?
And I would just say, like, to all of that stuff before, it was important for me to be upset and be sad. Like, I think trying to, shove that all down somewhere is just not functional for anyone. So aside from that, like, training has helped me really process those things. And for those of us who remain somewhat motivated to do these things, like, if you really don't and can't push yourself out the door, I'd say like don't try, especially if you're somebody that usually has no problem doing that. And like I speak for myself when I don't need someone kind of brandishing a stick to get me out the door. Like I want to go. So it didn't make sense for me to truly alter my normal routines from like a volume standpoint, other than the fact that we can't swim. So I have just been picking, and my coach has been great about this. He is somebody that like wants me to keep my mental sanity just as much as anything else. And so he's been picking dates on the calendar that I'm doing time trials, and I treat it like a race day. I just did one on Wednesday where it's a 20-minute climb in Portland, and there's there's like great cyclists around here from a triathlon and just a general cycling standpoint. So I wanted to see, what I could do. And I knew that there was a segment on Strava for it. So like you have a virtual start and finish line, and just the practice of like, pre-race, I ate risotto the night before, and I had, a snack of white rice with jam and almond butter before I went to bed. And then I woke up the next morning and had my oat waffle that I always have, but like plus extra. So I did all of the things that made me feel like I was ready to race. And like that was, to me, worth its weight in gold. Like aside from the fact that I had a great performance and I was like really happy to see my power numbers, like you just have to do those kind of things if you're a competitive person to like normalize all of this stuff.
I think all of that is, one, that's awesome that you went through your whole nutrition stuff. Of course, I love that. But I also, to touch even back even a bit further, is like, I totally agree with what you're saying, is like, I think we've all shed a few tears probably during shelter in place, just handling all the different stressors, whatever's going on, people homeschooling 3 different kids in 3 different grades, or changing and adjusting to work
off to all of you people schooling your children.
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And then you've got, we talked before we started the recording, but Fiona has a 5-month-old puppy too that's a little, got a ton of energy. So she's got that under her belt right now as well. So yeah, there's a lot going on there. And I think, like you're saying, acknowledging, like, it's okay, the whole thing that I keep seeing and I totally agree with is it's okay to not be okay, and to acknowledge those emotions that you're going through and kind of be able to process those. And if you can talk to somebody about it, like talk to somebody about it. If it's your spouse, there's also so many, I've seen like all these like virtual therapist things you can do now too, which is so cool. And so I think that's really great. And then to kind of add on, I don't think it's been released yet, but by the time people hear this, it will have been, is that I did a podcast interview actually with I believe her title is a certified mental performance coach. And she's kind of like in the sports psychology world. And hopefully people will get a lot of good tools from that podcast as well, because she had a lot of great tips on specifically like the athlete world and handling this whole COVID situation as well. So yeah, I think, acknowledging this, letting it processing it as best you can. Right. And then, trying to handle and control what is in your control too, I think is a big piece of it. So yeah. And so with your time trial stuff and the nutrition there, you kind of talking about that, I think is so rad, because I think that's something that is really important and that some people can use during this time as a point to focus on too, is like training your gut if you want. And that's could be something where maybe you work on it once a week in like your higher intensity sessions or your key sessions, because we have to train our gut just as much as we need to train our lungs and our muscles and our heart and all that stuff. So it is a huge important piece to kind of be able to tolerate that. So like with your touching back to like how the nutrition changed for you when we started working together, you talked about like the volume of food. And so what with that process, was it a kind of a slow, steady process for you? Did you try and do it all at once and have negative impacts? Like, what was that like?
I would say, like before I worked with you, I worked with a different nutritionist, and I didn't know any better to know that it was the right way forward. And so it was something that like severely limited calories in the evening, and then it was like a phased approach during the day with like, I wasn't allowed to have any snacks that wasn't basically like carrots and almond butter. It was just so restrictive that it felt like true freedom, where all I had to do was like, generally have these things in the right direction, and I don't know, don't eat trash. So like, it's not the kind of person that I am anyway. Like it doesn't really, so it felt mostly normal. I struggle the most when it comes to like eating the right things before running. Like I have a super sensitive gut thanks to all like the celiac stuff. For anyone that has ever had to deal with that, like I had small intestine problems. So then like leaky gut, all of that just exacerbated by like a millionfold with running. So figuring out like, okay, what makes the most sense for me before I go run. And like with triathlon, you typically have something else that starts, earlier on in the day. So I could not under fuel if I'm having a 4,000 yard swim in the morning to a run, like an 8-mile run that evening. So like, what was I doing during the day in order to keep things, sensible and light enough that I could run well, light enough in terms of like, I'm not going to eat a giant kale salad because that's going to be disastrous in the evening, versus like, okay, what foods did I have to newly accept as like my staples and were going to give me enough juice that I like would be able to sustain all of my workouts. Another big shift was like with that previous nutritionist, before a swim in the morning, he was like, you should just have a teaspoon of almond butter or a tablespoon of almond butter and blackstrap molasses. So like I went into 4,000 yard swims with nothing more than like molasses in my stomach. So like mind-blowing experience when I actually have enough carbohydrates and fuel to like sustain myself. And no wonder like my swim performance improved alone, because I wasn't ready to die after like 20 minutes. So huge benefits there. Overall.
That's good. I'm glad that we got that working in the right order there. So Yes, definitely. And I think that that is something too that like a lot of people like I mentioned will struggle with in terms of like the gut tolerance, and specifically with running. I think the gut is a bit more sensitive in that. Some people also swimming as well, but running for sure seems to be the more sensitive compared to like cycling and things like that for people gut wise. And so a lot of people will go into them fasted, but that can just kind of, especially for women, keep those kind of fight or flight hormones elevated, which is additional stressor on us. And then maybe we're not able to hit those intensities. So what is your kind of go-to pre-AM training meal? What does that look like nowadays?
So before I swim in the morning, I like a big swim set, I would just have two Kashi makes gluten-free like toaster waffles, because that's like light enough, easy enough on my stomach, but like, you know, still gets me 300 plus calories, probably more like 450 with almond butter, maple syrup on top, and coffee. Awesome. And then it has a lot to do with like what I'm having while I'm in the pool. Again, that was something that I didn't used to do before, like keep a gel on deck, or have like, without a doubt, I am now the person in my swim group that's like, where is your bottle and why isn't it on the deck with stuff in it? Because like my coach has really built me from being a meh swimmer to like, I can be competitive within this front pack of triathlon swimmers, like within reason. So I've worked so much on it, and so much of it was because I wasn't just dead in the pool by not feeding myself. And you are swimming in the pool, which you don't realize because you're in a pool. So
yes.
Like you can't expect yourself to still perform at your best when you're not actually, you know, giving what you need. Totally. And then it comes as no surprise if you don't fuel in the first workout that you're probably going to blow number 2 or number 3 as it comes along throughout the day.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. A big thing that I always kind of mention and tell my athletes, especially in bigger training blocks, is like nutrition and eating becomes another job. Like, and it is, it can be a lot of work, and learning how to get all that food in can be challenging. And again, it's a little bit of training your gut. And there's also can be that component of dampened hunger cues and responses from elevations of those fight or flight hormones from your training session. So sometimes people come out of a session and they're not hungry at all, and they, you know, wait several hours and then they eat a lot, or maybe overeat, or maybe choose the wrong things to not support the recovery. So yeah, I think that is, it's a key piece for sure.
Yeah, if you end up with your head halfway through a bag of tortilla chips, like, I mean, aside from the fact that it's pure joy and bliss, like, it's just, you can't do it after every session.
Yeah, so, salt and carbs. Yeah. And what are your favorite intra training fueling sources right now? What are your go-tos?
So for liquid stuff, I'm like a firm believer in Scratch. It settles really well in my stomach, and the strawberry lemonade is just like so good. I'm sad almost that it took them this long to come out with it, because it just, I feel like I'm on vacation when I'm drinking it. So that is my favorite at the moment. But from a gel side of things, because I think it was you or the person that told me about Untapped. I'm part of their little like brand ambassador squad at this point. Awesome. Like I get enough of this stuff, in the sense that it was the first time using it in a race that I was able to get off the bike, run a half marathon, and not end up like wanting to die somewhere along the way because I had to go to the bathroom, or like whatever the case is. Yes. It fueled me really well. And I would say that there is a bit of a learning curve to using it, because everyone responds a little differently, I think, to the natural like sugar effect. I actually burned through more gels than if I had used goo. I needed to have enough with me, and like fitting that all on my bike at first, like sometimes I had like taped it on the side, other times I was like, screw the tape, I'm just gonna shove it in the bento box, and then I'd be bombing down the hill at 40 miles an hour, and like my gels are flying out, and that's not a good situation either.
Yes.
So like, yes, it totally works for me. And then I like, my true guilty pleasure on the bike is just gummy bears. Like, it is the one thing, it brings me joy, and I often bake stuff and will like throw that in my pocket. Sweet potato bars are one of my favorites as well.
That.
So
that's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I mean, you're totally right on too. It's like the nutrition piece for during training and then during racing is it's one thing to like have someone be like, okay, these are the things you want to eat and these are your demands. And then a whole nother thing of like actually getting it from hand to mouth when you're, you know, racing and training. That's a whole nother practicing piece that people have to work on, and, you know, and practice as well. So that's good. You got it nailed down, problem solved.
Yeah, but only through like sheer and utter failure where, you know, with left to go on the bike, I will never forget it. It was like Santa Rosa, not this past year, but the year before. And I just happened to come upon a friend of mine that I trained with, and I was dying. Like watts were going south. I just felt miserable because I dropped every piece of nutrition I had.
Oh,
And I
shoot.
pulled up next to her on the bike, which, like, thank God there wasn't an official there, because we probably would have gotten like a penalty for not moving out of the draft box. And I was like, Christine, do you have any nutrition? And she handed me scratch gummies from her bike, which was so nice because I was passing her, and she, in theory, could have been like, screw you, you're gonna die. So, but yeah, she handed me scratch gummies, which was what got me like the last 10 miles on the bike. So
that's awesome. That's very nice of her. Awesome. And okay, so we're getting close here to time. So the kind of follow-up questions here I wanted to check in with you about are what are your kind of goals right now in terms of the whole COVID situation, looking forward at racing? Are you trying to get in on anything, maybe end of the year if things lift, or are we like, what are your what are your plans?
I'm almost a little afraid to actually like pick races. At this point, I am starting to, I mean, things seem like they won't be totally locked down for the year. In December, I know the Collins Cup at the Daytona race for the challenge family seems like a big deal. And so I'm kind of looking at that to say like, well, it's in December, at least that's far enough away that in theory the world should be back to somewhat normal.
Yeah.
My like goal really was to see if I could get a qualifying slot for Taupo, but for 70.3 Worlds. The window is obviously getting very narrow, so I'll be interested to see how Ironman kind of handles that.
Yes. Yeah, that'll be really interesting. Yeah, I've heard like a lot of races will either they're discounting their prices that they're hosting down the road in fall and winter, or they are you know, offering the option to refund or maybe move to another race date or something like that. I've heard things like that going on. Am I breaking up?
You froze briefly, but you're back.
Okay. So moving forward right now, what would you say your goals are for you, just training wise, fitness wise? What does that look like?
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to put a goal specifically on things, but like for me right now, my running has progressed a lot over the past like 2 months or so. And it was because when my coach is putting together my plan, he's 3 or 4 times a week. There's like some measure of Pilates and also yoga that has been included. The yoga's been there for more than a year, and they're all like YouTube yoga videos. And at first, it's not that I didn't take it seriously. It was kind of like, well, if I get to it, I get to it. And I have a hip thing that like basically my hip doesn't move correctly, or like the femur doesn't move correctly within the hip socket. And so I would end up after like big training blocks where I would feel this like horrible grinding, clicking sensation that wasn't super helpful for running fast or like being comfortable as a normal human being. So I would be seeing like, you know, a massage therapist or, you know, somebody to help me mobilize my joint. And it's really been through like a little bit of physical therapy, but mostly through like all of this alternative movement that has like allowed me to run faster because my body's actually moving well. So I just want to continue to see that, you know, grow in the right direction. Cycling, it's fun for me. I love to climb, so like it's fun for me to go after all of these traditional climbs in Portland and see what I can do. So that's like a mini goal, see how many QOMs I can go for, I guess, because that's what we live for at the moment.
Crushing it on Strava. Awesome. So, I mean, this has been awesome talking to you. And what I will do for people who want to maybe follow you, check out your baking, check out what you got going on for training and racing, can they follow you or find you on Instagram at the Salt and Sweet?
That's me. Awesome. Yep. And it's an N, not and. So Salt and Sweet, which some people know.
And do you post any of your baking stuff on a website anywhere?
So that is like what I am hoping to accomplish, but everyone has their like COVID goal. I just want to actually get my recipes onto my website, which is
Awesome.
just FionaMoriarty.com.
All right.
So hopefully getting some, great pictures, because everybody eats with their eyes before they eat with their mouth on there,
Yeah.
with that I love to make. So
Awesome. Well, people will, I'm sure, be looking forward to that kind of content as well. So if you get it up there, let us know. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Fiona. And if we get any questions from people, maybe we can get those answered via the comments or anything like that if people post any of those on the YouTube video. And yeah, we'll have more good information to come. Thank you again for sharing your story, and I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. All right.
thank you so much, Kyla.
No problem. Take care.